What time does your watch show now? What about today? How long is the average human lifespan? These are the kinds of questions that human beings come up with in order to measure or understand the concept of time. It is a system with a continuous beginning and end. However, what we call a day is one complete rotation of the Earth on its axis. A year is one complete rotation of the Earth around the sun. So they are relative concepts with no beginning and no end. So why do we perceive time as a straight line with a beginning and an end? Why do we try to use time in the best and most efficient way in a constant race? Why do we even build our entire civilization in such a way that we literally go crazy in this state of race? This week, let's take a journey through time itself and understand how human perception has put this deep and mysterious concept into a shallow mold, and how this shallow mold has turned us into racehorses with the Industrial Revolution. Welcome to Find the Truth. Since the first step into this world, human beings have been adapting to its cycles and developing survival skills. The need naturally arises to develop a system to make sense of and categorize the natural cycles of countless horses, such as when it is morning and when it is evening, when it gets cold and when it gets hot, when the soil is best cultivated and harvested, and when to reap the precious harvest. As a result of this, the first methods began to emerge in the Sumerian civilization around 5000 BC, followed by the Egyptian civilization. At first, the rising, setting, and setting of the sun were the distinct phases that divided the day into three, and were even a sign that told us when to worship. When the sun disappeared, the moon, the greatest time indicator, appeared on the scene, and rather than the sun, the fact that its movements were easy to follow and that it appeared in phases due to its movement relationship with the earth played a critical role for our ancestors to better manage the temporal process. And as a result, the concept of the lunar calendar was born. The lunar calendar, which first appeared in the Sumerian civilization, was used by sailors because of its relationship with the tides, by farmers because of the idea that sowing was more fertile during the full moon, and in religious rituals because of the certainty of the moon's cycles, and created the time period called a month to be 29 or 30 days. As time progressed and our civilization and complex systems and observation abilities improved, we see that civilizations like Egypt adopted the solar calendar instead of the lunar calendar. The Egyptian civilization, whose life depended entirely on the Nile River, used its flood times as a basic timing method for farming, and also calculated the time it takes our planet to make one complete revolution around the sun, which is the great cycle of our planet based on the changing angles of the sun as it rises and sets. Within this great cycle, they realized that the moon repeats its phases a total of 12 times, and they were able to divide a year into 12 months. Later, the Babylonian civilization, which we can call obsessed with astronomy, began to carefully monitor the movements of the sun, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, which they attributed to be sacred in the sky, and based on the sanctity of the number 7 from ancient beliefs, they were instrumental in the official birth of the concept we call day. Each day was associated with a sacred planet and celestial gods and began to be used. But man does not stop. He wants to measure the process in even smaller pieces and starts to investigate how long the day lasts, how long the night lasts, and starts to use new methods to measure it. In Egypt, as a result of this, a technique called sundials emerged and divided the day into 12 equal parts. The choice of the number 12 is also interesting because it is actually based on the 12 great Anunnaki gods of Sumerian belief and the 12 signs of the zodiac in the sky. In addition, the fact that it mathematically fits exactly into the 60 system created by Babylon was another factor. Of course, the Babylonians did not stop deepening the system of 60 and further refined it by dividing 1 hour into 60 minutes and 1 minute into 60 seconds. And finally, the 12 and 60 system, which we use even today, became indispensable in our lives. But we should never forget this here. Although these ancient civilizations calculated time down to the second, the concept of time they believed in was not linear. It was a cyclical concept. The time measuring systems were just tools developed to understand these cycles. In the belief and understanding of all these civilizations, the cyclical progression mechanism of nature remained the main. Philosophy of time and people built their lives on the repetition of these cycles. This includes the belief in death. Virtually no ancient civilization saw time as a fleeting concept, and the belief that somehow the cycles of life would repeat even after death became ingrained in cultures and religions. Now, some of you may be thinking, what if you see time as cyclical? What if you don't? But this is actually a concept that has very serious consequences on your psychology. Why? Because it has been used by some people to turn you into a kind of slave. Now it's time to delve into the more interesting depths of the concept of time. As I just said, you may not see a philosophical or psychological difference between time being cyclical and time being linear. This is perfectly normal because you've been brainwashed this way for about 150 years. But when you look at today's society, you must realize that the destructive effects of this have reached unbearable levels. You should even realize this when you look in the mirror, because they have deliberately brought you to this state. In the 18th century, when people in Britain discovered the power of steam and started using it to move mechanical devices, the biggest change in human civilization began and the Industrial Revolution began. Now, we are not here to say that the Industrial Revolution happened and humanity burned out. Today, if we have reached the age of 80 in good health, if we have today's technologies and opportunities, if the system can feed 8 billion people, this is thanks to the Industrial Revolutions. But there is a downside, and that is basically wild capitalism and imperialism. With the emergence of the first factories, people who had established their work and life cycles according to the basic cycles of nature encountered a new concept, the concept of overtime. This overtime period covered a certain amount of time during the day. But the problem started when Henry Ford standardized the production line method and time started to become a value for the bosses. The production model, which used to be more like "make me a table," was replaced by "how many tables can you make me in a day?" And then, with the standardization of the production line, "how many tables can you make me in an hour, in a minute?" Because of this production pressure, people started to be forced to produce faster in a shorter period of time and were turned into the racehorses I just gave you an example of. If you can make me 5 tables in an hour, you keep your job, but if not, someone else will take your place. Later on, this pressure would be reduced to minutes and then even seconds. And people who had lived with the calm and harmonious balance of nature for tens of thousands of years and organized their perception of time accordingly were completely detached from their prayers and turned into machines to be exploited in a 24/7 capitalist order where there was not even the concept of overtime, and their time was taken from them and turned into products and thus profit. In fact, the Industrial Revolution originated as machines taking over the workload of human beings. But unfortunately, because of the greedy capital titans, it has turned people into machines and people have become slaves of seconds. It is because of this modern robotic slavery pattern that we have come to see all of life as a production line. We are born, we grow and develop over time, then we die at the end of the line and the story ends. You are made to realize that you are no different from that table coming out of the factory and you are devalued. Not only that, a whole life is spent just to live 2 days on the weekend, 15 days of vacation a year, and you are paid 3 cents for that precious time. Therefore, with your perception of time working like a production line, you can't get rid of anxiety attacks because you are running out of time. Time is running out. Nothing is getting done. Meanwhile, those titans are hanging out comfortably with their billion-dollar fortunes. This is how a society becomes mechanized. This is how it takes away freedom. However, with flexible working hours, more days off, and most importantly, financial compensation for labor. Yes, maybe one person cannot earn a fortune of $100 billion, but society as a whole develops and civilizes. If you are in a place where the opposite is the case, you know that the future of the society is not being considered. It is being exploited by someone. Now, do you understand why you have not been warned about the dangers of the Niner time concept, which Vatican built the infrastructure for in the Middle Ages, and then the titans of industry imposed it on you, and why scientific studies have not been done and people have not been informed about its problems? Because today neither science is free nor media is free. There are studies being done on these issues, but they are not allowed to be shared with you properly. Today, because science is funded by the titans who are exploiting you, instead of telling you to be in harmony with nature, To find your ancient balance again, they say, "Are you tired, brother? Come and I will give you the antidepressant that I personally produce." And unfortunately, the mainstream science under their control remains silent, just as they did years ago when they announced that they would take the websites of pregnant women for cigarettes. As I have always said, science is the only hope of salvation for humanity, but free science provides us with this salvation. Otherwise, today's largely controlled science and controlled systems seem to be preparing our total doom. After all, in their eyes, we are no different from an object on a production line, right? Yes, the picture seems dark, but it is not difficult to find the light thanks to the internet. Both those who freely produce science and those who share this information are increasing, and the seeker can access this information again. Especially recently, with the increase in our knowledge of quantum physics and the development of technology and our understanding, the concept of cyclic time, the philosophy of our ancient ancestors, has started to destroy the concept and understanding of linear time and has started to burn our brains. In 1908, the famous physicist Hermann Minkowski, Einstein's teacher, introduced the concept of space-time by combining space and time. And these studies form the mathematical basis of what is known as the block universe model. Minkowski defined space-time as a four-dimensional structure. 3 dimensions were space and 1 dimension was time. According to his idea, the past, present, and future existed simultaneously in this 4-dimensional space. In fact, it was not Minkowski who first proposed this model, but Parmenides, who lived almost 2,400 years before him, argued in the 5th century BC that the universe was an unchanging holistic reality and claimed that the past, present, and future existed simultaneously. In fact, even he had learned this knowledge from someone else, the famous scholar Pythagoras. It is very important for you to watch the Pythagoras video I made on the channel to understand the roots of ancient Greek wisdom. Remember that Pythagoras also had this ancient Hermetic knowledge in Egypt and India. Hindus have a concept called Maya. It can also be translated as illusion. According to this concept, there is a veil between creation and reality that must always be overcome. And this veil is Maya, the veil of illusion. One feature of this veil of illusion that confuses our minds and prevents us from reaching the truth is time, according to Hindus. According to Hindu philosophy, getting lost in time is seen as an obstacle that we need to overcome because it is to get off the path of understanding the truth. What misleads people here is the thinking of the past, present, and future as separate patterns. In Hindu philosophy, it is believed that one can escape the cycle of samsara by getting rid of this misconception and realizing that everything flows as the continuity of a single whole. I've already told you about samsara, which is an endless cycle of time and reincarnation. And you can only get out of this cycle by reaching nirvana. That's why it's so important to focus the mind only on the present without thinking about the past and the future while meditating. This philosophy influenced Western philosophers, especially Pythagoras, and laid one of the foundations of today's block universe model. I always tell you that time is just cycles, and as a result, we are living in times where we are reinterpreting the knowledge of the past. While Minkowski's block universe model sees time as a big static block, Nikolai Kozyrev, one of the most interesting scientists of modern times, interpreted this big block not as a fixed concept, but as one of the basic building blocks of the universe, and showed us time as a plane that can carry energy forward and backward. One of the greatest influences on Kozyrev's ideas was Albert Einstein. In his general theory of relativity, which he proposed in 1915, he shook the world of physics by claiming that time actually has a structure that can be altered by gravity and shattered everything we thought we knew about the flow of time. According to this theory, which is actually a proven theory, if you were on a planet near a black hole, a year in Earth time would be equivalent to 10 years on our planet. The reason for this would be that the black hole, due to its inexorable mass, would bend time around it, slowing it down. You can watch the movie Interstellar, where this phenomenon is explained in a very beautiful way. With the proof of Einstein's theory, humanity's perception of classical time was completely destroyed. And today, with the addition of quantum physics findings, it is completely shocked. 1967, quantum physicists John Wheeler and Bryce David develop an equation. This quantum physics study shows us an interesting possibility. the absence of time. This can be a bit confusing to understand, because according to this study, what we call time, or what we perceive as time, doesn't exist at the quantum level, and everything is a single moment. In other words, it happens simultaneously. To simplify it, everything you do right now actually affects the past and the future, and the results of all of them are manifesting in you right now, and you're just reliving slices of this process. Honestly, it was difficult for me to understand this, let alone put it into words, and I don't think I was able to fully comprehend it, because our brains have evolved with a perception of time that flows, and it was a bit difficult for me to comprehend and explain it to you. I hope I was able to explain it a little bit, because once again, according to this approach, the law of entropy does not work at the quantum level. In other words, entropy, which best shows us the process in the universe, which shows the deterioration and disorder in the system, does not exist at the quantum level. It can even be reversed. This is actually an incredibly important discovery, because one day, if this field can be used in some way with quantum computers and developing technology, it may be possible to reverse the destruction caused by time for that object, from reversing old age to healing dead organs, from purifying contaminated water to renewing worn metals. In fact, when I was discussing this with their artificial intelligence, I also thought of this, the idea of producing a timeless object. According to this approach, if we can create a timeless quantum field where entropy does not work and put an object in it, theoretically this object cannot be destroyed and can remain intact forever. It's weird to think about. Who knows what doors it will open if it becomes a reality one day? One cannot help but wonder, when quantum physics and theoretical physics came together, we started to observe and understand this extraordinary nature of time in an interesting way. So of course the famous question came to mind. If time is not something that flows, if it is a whole, then is it possible to go forward or backward in this block? Yes. In short, is time travel possible? In 1895, the famous writer H.G. Wells published The Time Machine and introduced the concept of time travel in modern popular culture with a scientific basis. In the novel, a scientist who invents a time machine travels into the future to study the social and physical evolution of humanity. In his book, Wells treats time as a dimension in such a beautiful way that it can even be considered the basis of the concept of space-time defined by Hermann Minkowski almost 13 years after the novel. Science mysteriously follows science fiction. Remember this. This is a secret of humanity that has always been very interesting to me. Einstein proved to us with his theory of general relativity that the concept Wells wrote about in his novel could actually be real, and showed us that we could time travel into the future if we could somehow produce the necessary technology. First of all, you jump into a spaceship that can reach up to 9.9% of the speed of light and you step on the gas. Because you are so close to the speed of light, according to the equation E equals mc2, your mass increases and you start to bend space-time, just like square holes. In this way, during your 1-hour journey in that ship, a few years actually pass for us normal people on Earth. And you set off in 2025, for example, and after an hour has passed according to you, you return to the planet in 2030 according to the world year. There you go, back to the future. So what happens if you say, I went to the future, but I didn't like it, I want to go back to the past? This is a bit troublesome. In 1949, Kurt Gödel, a famous mathematical philosopher, began to formulate equations and hypotheses about time travel based on Einstein's general theory of relativity. As a result of these equations, Gödel created a model he called the rotating universe model. According to this model, in our universe, which rotates in blocks, structures called closed time curves, which we can call backward bends and paths in space-time, could form. And if one day we could somehow detect these structures and use them, traveling back in time would also be theoretically possible. But this model doesn't fit with our current understanding of the universe and is largely invalid. A similar but more detailed theory is the wormhole theory proposed by Einstein and Nathan Rosen in 1930, or the Einstein-Rosen bridge, as it is officially called. According to this theory, if a theoretical machine could bend space-time with some kind of energy that we cannot comprehend at the moment, It could both move faster from one part of the universe to another and, as a more extreme approach, move forward or backward in time. Think of it as the reverse of what I just described, approaching the speed of light and moving forward in time. But we don't yet understand how this would be done backwards. In addition to all this, going back in time is a concept that the human brain has difficulty perceiving. Maybe that's why we have such a hard time theorizing it, because it goes against both logic and the principle of causality in physics. According to causality, one of the fundamental laws of nature, every event must have a cause, and the cause always precedes the effect. So this means that you exist, and this is the result, and the cause goes way back in time, that your mother married your father, your grandfather married your grandmother. Now, if you kill your grandfather with a time machine, you disrupt this cause and effect relationship, and the whole balance of existence is disrupted according to our current perception. So even the slightest change in the past will upset the balance of all humanity right now, or even the balance of all existence if space-time is one everywhere. So these are paradoxes that are still beyond our comprehension. So I hope that one day we will not discover this phenomenon, because the destruction would be unimaginable. Imagine two different hostile countries discovering this. Isn't it chaotic and paradoxical to even think about? Humanity has been struggling for thousands of years to understand and control time. Calendars, clocks, technologies, all these are products of our efforts to measure and manage the concept we call time. But what has this linear perception of time imposed by modern society done to us? We live in a never-ending race, constantly trying to catch up, forgetting the preciousness of the moment. But what if this is a trap? What if this order is designed to exploit us and keep our minds busy? Quantum timelessness, block universe theory, relativity theory, etc. When we start to combine all these valuable scientific studies, we come across the fact that time is definitely not linear, that it encompasses everything in a cyclical block, that it can be slowed down, accelerated, and controlled if sufficient opportunities are provided. What concerns us humans who exist within this is this. It shows us what we need to realize on this plane where there is no past and no future. Only the present moment encompasses everything. You are not in a race. Then don't wear yourself out to reach it, or don't keep trying to run away from it. In a huge cycle, you are experiencing everything most preciously in this moment. And this moment affects the past, which you thought was over, and even the future, which you thought was not yet. So you have the opportunity to correct a mistake you made 10 years ago right now. Of course, I'm not talking about physically leaving. Maybe one day that will happen. But I am talking about correcting it mentally. Accept your regrets, your pain, your mistakes, and forgive yourself, so that you can remove their reflections from the future. If we exist in a big cycle, appreciate the conditions we are in right now. Make the most of it. Maybe it's spending time with your family. Maybe it's enjoying your work. Maybe it's just watching the scenery. Whatever it is, appreciate the moment. When you are experiencing something beautiful, don't think about the next step. Just focus on the moment. Are you having dinner? Don't think about what you are going to do after you finish. Enjoy that meal. If you change your perspective in this way, be sure that everything you do will start to feel more meaningful and fulfilling. Yes, most of us live or work in difficult conditions. Maybe we don't even have time to read a book. But remember, this is not the fault of the order of nature. It's the fault of the miserable order that man has established. And you always have an opportunity to get out of this order. One of the clearest and simplest of these is Zen techniques. There are dozens of books and resources on the internet about these techniques in Zen philosophy. You can research them and make it better to stay in the moment we call now and adopt it as a part of your life. Apart from all these, use the internet to read what the ancient sages say about these issues. Read what science says about it. Take yourself out of this horse race imposed on you by adopting the philosophy of circular time. And never forget this. Life is one day, and today is today. See you in the next video. Take care.